following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the ACHA Power Play. We are live here on the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. And of course, we are powered up by the Belly Up Network of podcasts and also the Belly Up Media Group. Good evening, everybody. Captain Lou here with you tonight. Happy holidays right off the top. I want to say that to everybody. Hope your Christmas season is going good. Hanukkah, however you celebrate this season. Or if you're like us here in mid-Michigan, getting yourself braced for a blizzard, or so they say, coming at the end of the week, just in time for the Christmas season. So we will have a white Christmas indeed. So welcome to the show tonight. This is our last show of 2022. It should be a good one tonight. Coming up here in a moment or two, we're going to have the head coach of Niagara University, Tom Mooradian, stopping by. He's going to give us a call. We're going to talk a little Purple Eagles hockey here in Division I. They're currently ranked 15th in the country in D1. We'll talk a little bit about their trip to nationals last year in St. Louis and on their trek to try to make it back to the national tournament, as the road to Boston will really kick into high gear coming up in January rather. And then at the bottom of the hour, close to it, we're going to have Devin Serra join us. He is the play-by-play voice of Central Michigan's D3 squad, who have cracked the rankings as they are looking for a trip to the national tournament. But right now, let's go to our guest line and let's bring in the head coach of the Purple Eagles of Niagara, Tom Mooradian. Tom, thanks for taking time out tonight. How are you?
I'm doing well, Lou. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, thanks again for coming on the show tonight. I know you're a busy guy, even though you're not playing right now. There's no rest for coaches, even with the semester break, is there?
No. Spent the day recruiting. Had a really good player in from Canada today. Spent some time with him and his family. Showed him campus, and then got right back to the drawing board, reconfiguring some stuff for our second semester schedule. Had some talks with some coaches, and super happy to be on with you guys right now. So thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it. So let's get right off the bat. You guys have had a decent start to the season, pretty good. You're in the top 20 in the country. I know coaches a lot of times don't like to look at the rankings, but it's something I know you guys are shooting for. But a pretty good start this year for you.
Yeah. I think the transition from Northeastern Collegiate Hockey League play to Eastern States Collegiate Hockey League play has been big for us. I think our big thing last year was we understood that we could compete. We did perform with some of the better teams in the country, or perform against rather some of the better teams in the country. Mm-hmm. So I think the transition for us, really trying to stiffen up our strength of schedule, has been really good for our development. We've got a pretty young team when referencing experience and when referencing, eligibility and length of play that these guys have left. So, I think it was really important for us to stiffen up the competition this year because, like you said, I mean, coaches, like, the rankings are important to an extent. Like, obviously we care more about them because of, the potential to qualify for nationals, and if and when we do, ending up at the tournament in a good spot. But for us, it's just really kind of focusing on the process to make our players better, and that's where we've been. That's what we've been trying to do all year.
I just want to talk real briefly about the tournament last year. The D1 format is so tough, and I know, like in D2 and D3 and some of the other ones, at least in the women's D1, I think you get double elimination. But boy, it's so important to get off a good start. I remember watching your game last year, broadcasting it, and I mean, you spot a team 5 goals. I mean, you can't even take 3 minutes off, and that's tough. And I know you guys I'm sure you're using that somewhat as motivation this year, but boy, it's such a tough way to go,
Yeah, no, it's been the fuel that's lit my fire since March 19th when we left.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, like it's interesting, and that's kind of what I was alluding to before. So our matchup was against Ohio, and we had performed very well against Ohio at Bird Arena last year. I think we had 2 games going to overtime, and we were fortunate to get the victory in those 2 games. And that's not that's not because we're the better team. No, those were great games. Those were 2 very well matched teams. We had no business being in the second game with how we played in the first and second. We got really fortunate in the third, caught some heat, put a really good game plan together, and kind of rode the wave. But they're a great team. They're very well coached. They're going to be very, very good this year. I mean, I'm good friends with Leo Marone over there, and I've seen what he's put together, and we're really looking forward to that because we know we're going to be tested a little bit more, way more in comparison to last year. So, but we were fortunate to have some success there earlier in the season. But what I was alluding to before earlier on the call was exactly that. Like we played, I think we played like 3. I want to say it was between like 3 to 5 conference games before we went to the tournament. And when we went to the tournament, we came out flat because that's essentially what we could have done the year before or that year in the conference that we were playing in. And, I think the most frustrating thing about that game was we scored 3 unanswered goals right after that, right? Yep. So like it was 5-1, 5-2, 5-3, and we had all the momentum and all the pressure put on Ohio. And then right after we scored, if you go back and watch the film, the third goal, Tristan Tyfair, who's having a great year for us right now, rings one right off the crossbar the next shift. Yep. It was like if that thing would have went in, and that's what I was alluding to before was the bad habits that we were picking up. I don't want to say we're playing lesser competition because the NECHL's got good teams and they're working really hard to turn everything around. It's just that we were a little too comfortable in that conference at the time. Okay. And I think that comfort transitioned into a really, really bad mindset going into that game. And that's the big difference we've kind of seen this year. Like I'll use Delaware as an example. Like we've never played Delaware before. We've never played half these teams in the Eastern States League before. So the feeling out process is a little different. And Delaware tested us. Like they forced us to be better defensively. They forced us to make sure that we were picking up sticks on the back check, playing within system, playing within structure. And it's nothing. Again, it's nothing against those NECHL teams, but we're just noticing that even if we're not playing a top 10 to 15 team this year, when we're playing in conference, we still have to be sharper, and that's what the coaches have taken away from this year, and that's what we're a lot happier with, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to avoid a first period situation like we had at Nationals last year. Yeah. And that's where we're our focus all year has been on the first 10 minutes, making sure that we come prepared and understanding what we need to do in gameplay.
You talk about the schedule that you've been making and putting together. I saw you played Adrian, you played Aquinas. Those teams have gotten the national tournament pedigree. How difficult is it to get non-conference teams to play? I mean, are you getting used to trying to schedule it? I'm fascinated by that, how you have to do your own scheduling like that. Is it a difficult chore?
It's very difficult because you have to make sure that you're on the gas all the time from a program building perspective, from a quality opponent perspective, and from an overall product that you put on the ice. Because these teams have worked so tremendous, like they've worked so hard to get their programs where they're at, and I can't speak highly enough about the coaches in this league, and from teams 1 through 7, just how hard they work. But you get into the brotherhood of some of these guys, the Gary Estalos at Adrian, and Kirk Handy at Liberty, and Leo Marone at Ohio, and Chris Garofalo at Stony Brook, and the list goes on and on about with these coaches that have just built successful programs. And every year they're constantly in the mix, top 5, top 10, top 12, at the absolute minimum. Stu Romick at Pittsburgh, I certainly don't want to leave Stu out. Right. But you've got to really prove to them that you're worthy enough for them to take the risk and put you on their schedule. And I just feel so blessed and fortunate that they've all given us the opportunity to perform against them and to play against them. And we've had to do a little bit of traveling the last 2 years, but we're starting to see the reciprocation of that coming back next year. Like we're really excited. We're going to be able to host Ohio, Stony Brook, Adrian, and Pittsburgh all in our building next year. So we're super excited about that. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. And it's like I was actually it was funny that you brought this up, because I was actually having a conversation with the recruit that we had down here today earlier about it, and he was just like, he's like, I don't understand like how you have to do all the scheduling yourself. I'm like, yeah, you have to perform. Like it's the players, right? Like it's not me, it's not the coaches. Like it's all about the players, right? If they perform and they're successful, like that's why you're doing it. You're trying to help them better their positions. You're trying to make them better hockey players. You're trying to give them a better experience. And I think what we've just found here at Niagara, especially this year, the more communicative we are with our group and the more information we give them and the more that they understand kind of the science behind all of it, the risk reward, what happens when you do this, what happens if you don't perform here, they tend to engage a little bit more, and they understand why it's so important. So yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, and you've got to really scratch and claw and fight, kick, and do whatever you can. But we've been very, very lucky that some of these coaches have given us the opportunity to play against them, and I'm super grateful for it.
You brought something up there that I want to touch on. How it really is a group effort, and I look at these kids. It's the one thing that I marvel at the most about covering the ACHA and the time that the kids put in. You've got the board along with you guys. Academics still is first and foremost, and they've got to really organize themselves, for lack of a better word. The ice time, the class time, and all of that. The dedication that they have is just amazing. And when I hear stories like that and the success you've had, I can tell that's the fun part of it for you.
Yeah, and I always tell these guys, I feel extremely lucky that I had the opportunity to be one of them. Like I played 4 years at Niagara, and so I only say that because it's a little bit easier when we talk to the guys, the coaches as a group, because we, for the most part, every single person on our staff is either an alumni or they've gone through a collegiate structure and played 4 years and did all that. So like we always like to tell them, like the most success you'll find in life is how to manage your time and how to really find opportunities and areas to really put into what you're trying to accomplish, right? So if you're trying to manage work, like I always joke, like we had to work, we had to go to school, we had to play hockey full time. This was back in the day when we practiced at 10 o'clock at night, and you walked out of the rink at basically midnight. You did the whole thing all over again. But we always try to tell these guys, like, if you're successful managing your time with work, with hockey, with school, with social balances, with your girlfriends, your friends, whatever the case may be, like that's where you really find the silver lining and the stress that comes with managing everything. Is you find your areas where you can operate in an efficient manner in.
Yeah, and one of the things that that I could tell how much you really think of your team, because you wanted to get a couple of players on. I look at some of the guys from last year that were at the tournament, like Rylan Clemens and David Christopher. I mean, they've got a taste of what it's like there. If you could just kind of highlight some of the leaders on your team that have helped you this year in particular.
Ooh, there's so many.
Yeah.
I always like to tell those guys, like I'm 31st on the depth chart. They're 1 through 30, but it all starts with DC. I mean, we call David Christopher DC. The guys call him DC the G, but he's been our captain for 3 straight years, even through the COVID year. And I think there was just something super special about him. Like we brought him in 2000. I think 2019, 2020 was his first year, and like he just did everything the right way, and the way he carried himself, and he was just so calm and collected, and he really proved to be like, once we had 2 great captains that were here, that both wore the C before he was here, and then they both graduated at the same time. So we knew that putting that letter on his shirt was the best decision. He was certainly the most worthy of it. But he's a lead by example guy. Anthony Thurston is another natural born leader. I think he really kind of holds the voice in our locker room. I refer to him as more of like the alpha captain. He's the guy who kind of takes control of the room, and he'll challenge the guys to be a little bit better. So it really starts with those 2 guys at the absolute, forefront of everything. And then Connor Loft kind of came into our program last year, and just, again, another guy who just does everything the right way off the ice. Never is ever disrespectful, always doing everything the coaches ask of him. He's the only, I always joke, the only we like to call him the perfect human, because I don't think he does that. He does anything out of line. Like they're all kind of like that, right? Like that's why they meet those, at least what I can see. But they all kind of meet certain standards that we as a coaching staff felt were, the reasoning behind them becoming captains. And they've just proven 10 times over, especially between last year and this year, why they're in those roles. Because DC and Thirst have both been captains last year and this year, and Connor's been a great addition. But you touched on Rylan Clemens. We're starting to see a resurgence in his 200-foot play this year. Like, we joke, I always joke with him, like, you'll never see a player who gets more opportunities every game than him. And, he produces, and he puts up numbers for us. He's got a tremendous hockey IQ. He sees the ice really well. He's a great playmaker. But, like, he really his game the last, like, 2 or 3 games really came to life. Like, his work ethic defensively, especially for someone who's not known for defensive play, someone who's known for, strictly offensive productivity. His 200-foot play is really starting to come into its own. Like, he was one of our best players at Delaware, and he wasn't even on the score sheet. So, he's young, and then it's really kind of hard to leave out Tristan Tyfair and Devin Sanders. I mean, we're really fortunate in the sense that we've got those guys for, the Sanders, the Clemens, the Tyfairs. We've got those guys this year, next year, and the year after.
Nice.
The year after. And Tyfair is he's just a very dangerous player. Like, he can create, he can score, he can make plays, he's very good defensively. Like, I always joke with him, like, he's so dangerous because of his goal scoring prowess, but he's incredible on the wall. Like, whenever the puck comes along the wall, whether it's rimmed, tape to tape, in his feet, like, he always makes a play, gets it to his stick, and then gets it out, whether it's a headman or if it's a soft dump into the neutral zone, but it gives us an opportunity to change. So, those guys have all been massive for us this year. And I don't want to leave anybody out. I could go down and I could walk
sure.
through the entire lineup. But, another one that comes to mind is Austin Robinson. Shows up every day, does his job, never complains, always looks to get better. And I think he's another guy like DC, just leads by example and just does everything the right way.
We're joined for a few more moments by Tom Mooradian, the head coach of Niagara University, the Purple Eagles, right now ranked 15th in Division I of the ACHA. Tom, you got, every coach I talk to, I've heard this phrase since I started covering the ACHA about 7 years ago. The first semester is the marathon. Now it's the sprint. You got January coming up. You got, like 6-7 weeks of games. Then you start to hopefully have that push or start thinking about nationals. If there's one thing you think your fellas need to work on once January hits for that stretch run, what might it be?
Funny, we actually started, it's going to sound super simple, but, I think we just need to have more fun. And we were, and I'm serious. Like it's, like a lot of the guys have been super communicative to the coaching staff all year about how they like some of the changes that have been made. They like, I guess the quote unquote vibe in the locker room has been, I guess, a lot better than what it's been in years past. I just think because we don't have like a resurgence of new recruits coming in because of the massive graduating classes we had, so guys feel a little bit more comfortable together. And I'm sure that's probably the main reason why. But I was actually talking to DC earlier, probably about 3 weeks ago before we went to Delaware, and he just said he's like, yeah, I feel like we're all gripping our sticks too tight. We feel like we're a bunch of 22, 23, and 24-year-olds that forgot how much we love hockey. So we transitioned our focus that week just to having fun, and that was I told the guys, I want to see every time we scrimmage, I want to see the bench that scores light up. I want to make sure that we have incentive, fun incentive and fun de-incentive to win and lose drills and stuff like that. So they are de-incentivized when it comes to losing drills. And, we just kind of took the ball and ran with it. And I think what we noticed in Delaware was the team win meant so much more when we closed out the weekend, that second game. And, for us, like, we're really happy with what we're doing structurally. We're really happy with the development that our guys are getting in with a stronger schedule this year. I mean, we played 3 SUNYAC NCAA Division III opponents too. So we've had a handful of very challenging games. We love how the guys have responded. We love everything that we're doing systematically. We want to see these guys have a little bit more fun, because I think the team that has a little bit more fun becomes a little bit more of a team. They gel a little bit more, and we know that we're confident in the group that we have, and if they're firing from all cylinders, we think we could be pretty dangerous if given the opportunity.
Well, lastly, I saw in your bio, if I were to cut you out on the ice, you'd bleed purple, because you played 4 years for the Purple Eagles, and then now you're the head coach. It's in your blood. Who's your favorite pro team?
I would have to say, it's funny because I like the Tampa Bay Lightning have always been like my favorite team since, like, Marty St. Louis was always my favorite player growing up.
Yeah.
And then when Sidney Crosby came into the league, I became kind of like a surrogate Penguins fan, because I love. It was more of a Crosby fan.
Fair enough.
Pittsburgh fan, but I'd have to say my favorite team's probably Tampa Bay.
Okay, I was gonna. Not a Buffalo Sabres guy, huh?
I have a love-hate relationship with Buffalo sports. So, like, I grew up 25. I actually live in my hometown that I grew up in Youngstown. So I grew up 20, 25, 30 minutes north of Buffalo, and from age, like, I always make the joke that, like, I was 9 years old when the Music City Miracle happened with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
That was the last time they had played in the playoffs until 2007, or today was 2017. Like, I was 27 the next time they made a playoff. I don't know, like, as coaches, like, you love the game and you don't coach to win. Like, you coach to win, but you coach to help and develop and to give players an opportunity to be better and have fun. But at some point you can only go so long without winning. So I kind of pulled the carpet on the Buffalo teams. I used to be a diehard Sabres. Like, the Sabres is the same thing, right? Like,
yeah.
I think I'm 32 years old. I'll be 33 this year. I think I've had 2 mortgages, paid off my student loan debt, had 4 years of college under my belt, worked in the corporate world before I was full time at Niagara for 8 years. But since the last time the Sabres made the playoffs, so no, it's tough to love them. But they both they're both in a good spot right now. Like, the Sabres are going to be really, really good. I went to a game the other day, and I was like, holy cow, they're going to be good. And the Bills are going to be pushing for something special here soon, especially with that quarterback.
Well, I agree with you on the Sabres. They're up and coming. I think they're about a year or two ahead of Detroit coming back. But yeah, they're fun to watch. Tom, hey, this has been great. I'll let you go so you can take a breather tonight before you head back out on the recruiting trail. I really appreciate you coming on and talking Purple Eagles hockey and ACHA. Hopefully you can keep it rolling, and you can get that return trip to nationals, and I could come find you and meet you in person out in Boston in March.
Yeah, no, that'd be great, Lou. I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for all you do. I mean, it's platforms like this that help grow the game, and we're just trying to grow it. More so the league, rather, and we're trying to grow it for the players. So I appreciate all the effort. Obviously, if you need anything down the road, give me a shout.
Will do. Thanks, Tom. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Lou. Have a good one.
You too.
Same to you. Bye.
Tom Mooradian, the head coach of Niagara University, here joining us on the ACHA Power Play. Before we go to a little kind of a live commercial break, then we're going to bring in Devin Serra, the play-by-play voice of the Central Michigan Chippewas. I want to kind of bring up the men's Division I rankings, if I can figure this out here. I'm getting a little better at it here. Here we go. Just kind of the latest rankings that came out last week. I don't think we're going to get another set until our next show, which is going to be in January on the 9th. So let's run down the D1 rankings. Minot State right up there where they were last week at number 1. Adrian College at number 2. Liberty at number 3. Nevada, Las Vegas at 4. Indiana Tech rises up to 5. They're playing really well this year. Ohio, as Coach Mooradian mentioned, they're always right up there. Boy, they had a heck of a run last year at 6. Central Oklahoma at 7. Jamestown at 8. The Jimmy's still up there. Ken Gaffney doing a hell of a job with Lawrence Tech. They're 12-1-4. They're at 9. Calvin University, they're at 10 this week. Maryville at 11. Pittsburgh at 12. Another team that Niagara has played this year. Arizona at 13. Grand Valley making the climb. They're up to 14th now. We've got to keep an eye on them from the Great Lakes Conference. Niagara, we mentioned, at 15. Indiana U of Pennsylvania, 16. Illinois State at 17. Then you've got Stony Brook at 18, Arizona State at 19th, and Michigan Dearborn making it back into the top 20, hoping to creep up a little bit there in the Wolverine Hoosier Athletic Conference, along with Lawrence Tech and Indiana Tech. So just kind of a look at the top 10 of, or the top 20 rather, in Division One. So just kind of keeping an eye on that for you. So we want to thank head coach Tom Mooradian for joining us here on the ACHA Power Play as we roll along here on this Tuesday, December the 20th, 2022. Hope everybody's having a great year. Winding down 2022. It's crazy how the year has gone by already. So I want to take a minute before we bring in Devin Serra, our next guest. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here with what I show as one of the things I'm still working on. There we go. All right, we're back here live on the ACHA Power Play. Want to thank Tom Mooradian for joining us, and now let's bring in our next guest. He is the voice of Central Michigan Chippewa hockey here in 2022, 2023. Let's bring in Devin Serra. Devin, thanks for taking time out. Happy holidays, my friend.
Hey, same to you, Lou. Happy to be on here, man. It's been a long time since you and I talked. I think the last time we had a conversation was all the way back in 2020. Was it 2021 at the COVID Nationals?
Yes, at Davenport. Absolutely.
Yes, Patterson. Good old Patterson Ice Center. Boy, was that a tournament, huh?
Oh, my God, man. You know, it was there were some great games in that one for sure. And,
yeah,
you know, that's the one thing about the Nationals, boy. You just never know. Last year's again, You know, we know your team, Central Michigan, just came up just shy of getting to the semifinals, but you know, they made a heck of a run and nothing to be ashamed about in that run last year.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just, and we're talking last year's, when St. Louis went on it, that was a crazy tournament. I mean, you had Cinderella runs, kind of all over the place. I think Nebraska had a good shot at getting to the semifinal. Notre Dame, Arkansas, who made it all the way to the finals in that COVID, nationals, and then lost to hope in overtime like Central did. So I mean, all over the place, but it's always a good time, especially down here in Division III where parity seems to be the common factor.
Well, you talk about Arkansas. I'm going to ask you right off the shoot, what do you think it's going to take for a team like that to finally break the stranglehold that the Michigan teams have on this D3 championship, man? It's been, what, 13 years that the MCHC hasn't lost? It's crazy.
Oh, they ever want to know? Arkansas has been one of the better independent teams in Division III, right? They're kind of been up there with Notre Dame and Florida Gulf Coast the past couple of years. And, I was thinking earlier, looking through kind of my notes and, I kind of went through the rankings and looked at, the whole top 10 and kind of did a deep dive. And, you think about where Arkansas has been. They've always kind of hovered around that top 5, close to number 1 ranking for so long. And, everyone's kind of wondered, well, when are they going to take that next step and get there? And they kind of already have been there. We mentioned how they lost to Hope, last year in overtime, and then the year before lost in the final to Hope again, right? So that Achilles heel, it really is the Hope College Dutchman that's their rival per se, why they haven't been able to get over. And I think, looking at their squad, credit to that whole group. I mean, 17 wins, 2 losses. Like, they've taken down, with who they've played, some pretty good opponents. Missouri State, the number 4 team, I think it is in the country. And then, Missouri, and then they've taken care of business against Nebraska. And I think playing in that independent schedule, Lou, I mean, how much of a chore it is to go to a lot of different places and travel far. I mean, they will travel anywhere and anywhere to, kind of play, right? So as the lighting behind me doesn't really help me out.
Oh, that's all good.
Kind of went dark on here. But no, I mean, I just think, boy, they just need to continue what they're doing. And it's that last stand. I mean, you look at, I think 3 of their top 5 scorers are top 5 in the ACHA Division III, right? And just points alone. And I think they have the talent, they have the depth, they certainly have the coaching to go all the way. But it's just when they get to that big game in the final moments where, it's a close match, where it's a 2-2 game, 3-2, they like we said, last year could have been anybody's national tournament. I think Hope was the favorite going in, right? But we saw they had those 2 overtime games. And if Arkansas wins that, look, we could be talking about them being the reigning national champions. So they just got to continue what they're doing. They got to win out the year. They probably will. They've got a pretty good schedule, I think, of games. I think they play Missouri State again, Drury University, who had an upset against one of the top 25 teams. They're going to get there, and they're going to be one of the teams to that nobody wants to play, and certainly nobody in that top 10.
Well, you talk Hope, we might as well talk about them. What's funny is when they won the first one in 2018, they had to play in that regional tournament setup to get there, kind of like what Aquinas did in 17. Now, Division III doesn't have to do that anymore. They just take the top 16 teams based on the rankings because there aren't as many teams as like in D2. But wow, I mean, Devin, they just don't miss a beat over there in Holland. It's just, they're one of those teams. They just reload. It's amazing to watch. Chris Van Timmeren's got an amazing program. It took a while for them to get over the hump, but boy, they are definitely the standard bearer right now. Still, eh?
Yeah, you said it, Lou. They are. I mean, 3 of the last, I think, 5 national championships have been Hope, right? The one in 2018, the one last year, the one the year before. The MCHC runs through Hope College, and I think everybody's kind of aware of that. Everybody knows that they're going to be that team to beat almost every year in, year out. But, I mean, if we're talking just this year specifically, yes, I think it's 13-1. Yes, they're number 1 team. I don't think this Hope team has been as dominant as we've seen in previous years. Now, when we look at the schedule that they've played, okay, they play on the Michigan Collegiate Hockey Conference West, right? A division that includes Grand Valley, Ferris State, Michigan State, programs that historically have been there and have been playing good hockey with them and have really given them competition. But, in the past years with the way COVID's happened and, recruiting's kind of been all over the place in Division III, and some of these programs like Lawrence Tech and Grand Valley and Adrian kind of use a tier system. It's kind of, I would argue, drop the competition next to them. But regardless, they are still doing what they normally do, controlling, if you just look, Lou, at the shots per game, the puck possession time, they're doing everything you see a normal Hope team do, right? And play that 200-foot game, be better in the 5-on-5. But they've had some really close games against really some opponents you wouldn't expect. Oakland University lost only by 2 goals to them on multiple occasions. They split a series with Saginaw Valley. That was their first loss, Lou, and I think 400 and what was it days? I don't even know at this point. Over a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at kind of, what I just mentioned, kind of the schedule they've played, some would argue, and, take it for a grain of salt coming from a Central Michigan play-by-play guy that, the rivalry, between Hope and Central. It's bitter, especially between the coaches and the players. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute. Right. But, just looking at like this team and what they're capable of, they're still the gold standard, the ones you have to go through. But, look at the schedule. They played Davenport, Trine, Ferris State, and Ferris has had a couple of big upsets. They took down Grand Valley State earlier this year. I believe they also had a win against. Did I say Florida Gulf Coast?
No, not yet. But
yeah, that's going to be a trap game for them, and then Grand Valley, and I think that's the game in Division III. And you obviously know the Hockey House; they're going to be all over that. That's a bigger rivalry. That's the rematch from the conference final last year where Grand Valley upset them, won the Vesna Cup. And, people didn't expect that. I certainly didn't after the way CMU got blanked 6-0 in the semi. So, look, it's still Hope's one of the top team in the nation in the rankings. But, I just think it's an anybody can beat anybody year, Lou. I really think that, Hope's going to be there in the top 5. And I would argue that Notre Dame is the best team in the country right now. But regardless, they're going to be there, and we'll see what happens. But it's certainly a different year, I think, for Hope.
One team that I know you're familiar with that I had their head coach on earlier this year, Brendan Ryan from Saginaw Valley. They were a powerhouse, back in the day before I started covering the ACHA back. I want to say around 2009, 2010, they were back-to-back champs, if I'm not mistaken. It sounds like going there to watch a hockey game now is like a must-see because it's standing room only. I know you guys go over and play there, and it's fun. And I wish I had more time in the year to go watch some of these games. I'm still going to make it up to CMU to watch a game. I want to get over to Saginaw Valley to watch a game. I've been to watch Hope play, but Saginaw Valley's resurrected that team. I know they went to nationals last year, got a taste of it, but it sounds like they're doing pretty good this year too.
They are. And really the difference has been what you just mentioned. Brendan Ryan is one of, if not like up there, top 3 coaches in Division III. I have a lot of respect to him and the way he's recruited with that program, the way he builds a personal relationship with his players. We went there doing the broadcast for that game, and we really were kind of strapped on equipment, at CCHN. It's a student run, program and network, and we try our best to cover every game the best it can. But we were missing some equipment, and we had some audio issues and failures, and we were kind of scratching about the internet. And Brendan was nice enough to come up to us, actually introduce himself to us the day before when we played at CMU at Martin Ice Arena, and he offered to give us a lending hand if we need any help with internet. He told us, you guys have full reign for the broadcast. Saginaw does their own live streams at their games. I believe it's kind of on and off. There's a commentator. But he was nice enough to lend us equipment and, and just that personal note. He's just such a wonderful guy. And you're absolutely right. Saginaw right now is scary good. They have beaten like we mentioned, Hope College, their first loss in, over a year and a half. They've, gone on the road places. Their own barn. Saginaw Valley Ice Arena is absolutely the most electric barn, I would argue, anywhere in Michigan right now in ACHA. I mean, the students pack that place in. They have theme nights every weekend. They have the smoke machines. They have the lights going. They got all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from like almost an NCAA team, right? And they have the band there too. Oh my God, it's an environment for sure, and I think the team feeds off that. And the student body is so.
How
Sorry,
couldn't you not? No, go ahead. I'm just saying, it's when I go to when Aquinas has got their Southside rocking, the players definitely feed off of it.
Yeah.
How could you not with a crowd like that?
The college hockey atmosphere isn't something you often get in the ACHA, with just the almost stigma that goes on at some colleges. People don't know, or people look at it as, hey, is this club hockey? Is the ACHA? Saginaw is treated like a professional team on their campus. All right. And it's so hard to find. But, the point is Saginaw has been one of the best teams in the country, ranked 5th. They have big wins over Lawrence Tech, Florida Gulf Coast, Hope. And it's one of those things where it's exciting to see just from the conference standpoint, because you want to see different teams start to resurrect themselves, like you mentioned, and start to compete with Hope specifically, right? In Grand Valley, and this year, like they barely squeaked into the Nationals. Last year, they had a tough outing against Michigan in the conference, and that really kind of derailed them, I would say, from, the momentum they had going to the Nationals, right? And this year, I just think with Brendan Ryan, that coach, Shaheen is their captain. They have a lot of good scorers. I'm forgetting his name, but their top scorer is lethal. I think he's top 10 in the nation in goals scored. They have good depth. They are a physical team. They have a lot of different pieces that you can play them 5-on-5 and they can keep up with anybody and actually outwork you. And then they'll make you pay on the special teams. And, I just think that's something where I think it's time for Saginaw to take that step. I think it's time for them to be considered serious and as a national championship contender. And I don't mean that as just a blowing smoke to Brendan Ryan and that crew. They're legit, and they've proved it, time and time again this year. Now they have some, questionable times this year against Hope and Lawrence Tech, but I mean the remaining schedule: Grand Valley, Michigan, Calvin. They get to prove themselves. They get to say, hey, look, we get to go into March and, the road to Boston, it's going to go through them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they work their way up to the top 3 if they win some of these big games, and especially if they do it in large margins. And quite honestly, Lou, how important the 5-goal margin is in the rankings. It's very, very important. And Saginaw's won a lot of games by 5 goals or more.
That's huge. I'm going to bring up the rankings real quick just to show everybody in D3. You talked about Hope at number 1, Notre Dame right there. It's Arkansas, Missouri State, Saginaw Valley at 5, Lawrence Tech at 6, Grand Valley at 9, Purdue made a big jump to 8. Air Force Academy's always there. It seems like they get there into the Nationals. Mm-hmm. Michigan is back up at 10. You talked about Nebraska. Then you've got Oakland making a resurgence. They're still 8 and 9, but they're at 20. Central, in at 24, and Calvin, a lot of time left right there. And so you've got just a lot of some good quality again in the rankings. You mentioned Lawrence Tech. With Ken Gaffney's program there has been amazing, and they're coming back. And Michigan,
all three, the D1 team, the D3, the women's team. I mean, they've got to go in there. I would not be surprised if one of those teams makes a run. I mean but I mean, your point to the credit, Lou, the rankings. Let's not forget, anyone that knows D3 the last couple of weeks, months, has looked at the rankings and said, "Wait a minute, what is wrong here? Why is Sacred Heart number 1? Springfield College." You had kind of this weird like dynamic, and you just talked, head coach Niagara, Tom Moorfield, right? He talked about how you can't look at the rankings too closely, especially early, because of how much the computer rankings get skewed and there's not enough data. This was the most up-to-date rankings we've had. I mean, I was blown away by how accurate I thought the top 10 was. Yeah. Now you go down the list a little bit to the rest of the 25, and it's a little bit of still question marks there. I think,
Mhm.
as far as what you mentioned, Air Force, Purdue, teams that some would argue maybe benefit from a weaker schedule, out of conference
Yeah.
from the MCHC, which, I think it's very reasonable to say, yes, there is a little bit of computer bias towards the MCHC, and it best be because I think the last 13 of 14 national championships have come out of that conference, right? So is that stat correct? I'm not really sure off the top of my
Yeah,
head, but
it is.
close to.
The last team to win the only team to win that wasn't from the MCHC was Sioux College in
Yeah.
2019.
Yep.
And that team, I love Coach Mike. He's been a guest of mine many times. Great guy. That team that year would have challenged at D1.
Mm-hmm.
They they rolled Grand Valley in the final, and I think they would have probably beaten Michigan in the final. Maybe not 11-2, but they rolled. And like I always say, the proof is in the pudding at the D3 level. Devin, with the MCHC, they get to the tournament, and you hear people complaining, but boy, at the end, you get 2 to 3 teams in the semis every year. And I mean, what was it, 2018? All 4 teams were from the 2016 when it was CMU and Oakland and Calvin and Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I remember that. You can watch it on YouTube where Aquinas played Oakland. There's people on ladders around that rink at Southside. Man, it was incredible. But
yeah,
let's get to your team, Central Michigan. They've had an up and down year, and they had a coaching change halfway through. It's how's the transition been for Coach Martin now that he's in charge of the program?
Well, since kind of, as you mentioned, that coaching change, that was before the Grand Valley series, probably now 2 weeks ago. That was kind of all directed towards kind of just the locker room and kind of the atmosphere, right? I think, they started the year 6-0 against teams they should be. I think it was Ferris State, Cleary, Lake Superior, and then they lost 6 of 8. And you were kind of questioning whether, this team had the drive, the fight. They had a couple of games that got away from them. They honestly should have won. I mean, they blew 3-goal leads against Ferris State. They got dominated on home ice against Florida Gulf Coast. The Saginaw series, I mean, at Saginaw Bay Ice Arena, they blew a 3-goal third period lead. I think they had 2 shots the entire period after dominating the game. And so it was kind of directed towards, hey, look, this team was kind of losing their drive. They were losing kind of the momentum they built the first 6 games. And it just came down to the fact that, look, they were in the mindset of, we're all in this year. We need to find a way to turn this thing around. And they decided to make the switch from Tyler Cataline to Brennan Martin. And honestly, a former player, Lou, I mean, 6 years, he lives and breathes ACHA. He's been around and captain for 4 of those years and never quite got that national championship, right? But always kind of had in the back of his mind. I talked to him after the year last year ended, after they bowed out to Hope, just, 2 weeks after. And he mentioned how, I want to stick around this program. I don't think we're going anywhere. I think we're going to have something to prove here and something to welcome. And full circle now, months later, and he's the new head coach. So going into that, right, Grand Valley, and yes, how that change is going. Well, honestly, it kind of showed on paper. They played a close game with Grand Valley all the way to overtime. The first one, it was back and forth. The 5-on-5 was really, really even, and something that, if Grand Valley, I don't want to say if they play earlier in the year, CMU gets, walked, but I mean, it could have been like that. So they lose in overtime, and then they come back the next day after that heartbreaking loss. And what do? They go down 2-0 early. You think, oh boy, here we go. Grand Valley's going to run away with this. They score 5 unanswered goals, and half of those on the power play. They capitalize. They start taking extra shifts. The guys start playing the full 200 feet ice and back checking hard. And I think that was something they wanted to prove to their new coach. Hey, we're all in on this. And they hold on. Granted, Grand Valley squeaked in a couple of goals late. It looked like it was going to be close. And then they seal it with something they hadn't done earlier this year. Finish it off 6-4 win. It was such a drastic change from kind of the effort standpoint we saw earlier in the year. And, I haven't even gotten to the toughest losses. They lost, I think, 11-4 to Notre Dame. Came back the next night, lost in overtime to them. But it was just something that after this weekend, now you look at this Central Michigan team that was 0-4-2 against ranked opponents before Grand Valley, that they needed an identity change. And I think now with the win against at the time, they were the number 15 team in the country, now 9. This team's looking around and saying, hey, we can compete with the best of the best. We only lost by 1 goal to Saginaw in both games, where they honestly lost in the last 2 minutes in both. And then you look at the schedule they have coming up. It includes a lot of good teams. The showcase coming up, they're going to play Missouri State, Nebraska, 2 top 15, 16 teams in the country.
Wow.
And then they're going to go and play Michigan and then Lawrence Tech. And that's a very important game because, they beat Central Michigan, beat Lawrence Tech in their conference tournament last year after Lawrence Tech dominated them in the regular season finale. So there's a lot of bad blood there. And there's a lot of bad blood between them and Michigan. So look, if you're keeping an eye on Central Michigan and a lot of credit to, the people that follow our broadcast, they've, me and Reagan Cleaves give our analysis and there's a lot to talk about. They're getting some injuries, guys that were injured back, Isaac Gibbs, Connor Morgan, the list goes on and on about the points of this team. I could talk, for hours about them, right?
Sure.
But there really is a shifting point coming in this team, and they are on the outside looking in. But, honestly, looking at the teams ahead of them, like Arizona State, Sacred Heart, Washington University of St. Louis, no discredit to those programs at all. But I think if CMU rattles off a couple of big wins, if they go on the road to the showcase, take down, let's say they upset Missouri State, get one of those against Nebraska, right? And then they steal a game from Michigan or Lawrence Tech, they easily make the top 16 and they got a shot again at nationals.
That's big, and they definitely have. I do believe that they have destiny in their own hands. They can still come back and do it. My big thing, getting back to Coach Martin, that if you talk to him, ask him what is the toughest thing that he has to do now as a head coach, as opposed to maybe being, you know what I mean? It's because Aquinas is going through the same thing with a new coach after Jordan Promota stepped down after a decade or close to it. It's especially mid-season, man, that had to have been difficult. It has to be his head's got to be spinning.
I honestly think that it's pretty natural for him now. I think now that first game, he might have had a little bit of nerves, just thinking about, hey, how do I keep this team, in shape? How do I make the line changes right? How do I not mess this up and get a bench minor penalty, which they did for too many men, right? So, but it happened once. They got away with it a little bit in the second game, and the referees didn't see it, so it didn't happen, right? But no, I honestly think that it's just what we just talked about, keeping this team on track, but having fun, Lou. Because to be honest, I love what you talked about with Niagara head coach Tom Moorfield. You got to have fun. I think this team wasn't having a lot of fun. They were losing a lot of games, right? They weren't having as much fun. There wasn't as much jump in the locker room. With Brennan Martin now, he's one of the boys. He's one of the guys. He knows what it's like to play in this league recently, and he can relate to these guys. So, yes, it's going to bring more fun to the locker room, but it's about keeping these guys on track, saying, hey, we know what we are. We know who we are. I don't mean to sound like Dan Campbell right here, but we know who we are. That's his message. And this team believes if they can put all the pieces together and keep guys off the injury list and keep guys eligible, that they believe they've got a shot. So he's got to keep this team, on the same page, focused, but still allow them to have fun and make sure they're not getting too on edge like probably they were earlier in the year.
Well, Devin, you speak the word fun, and I can tell you have fun doing this stuff as a play-by-play boy for Central Michigan.
We try to.
As a CMU grad myself, way back in the day, long before you were born, we never had this opportunity to do stuff like this with hockey, especially because they didn't have that back then. You guys have a great crew. I know, like Sean Bednard, I got to know him, and Tyler Marcotte back before you started at CMU. And you've kind of carried the torch, if you will. And just talk a little bit about what you guys do and, your network that you do the games on. It just it seems like you're having a blast.
Well, like you mentioned, credit to Sean Bednar, Tyler Marcotte. There's a whole bunch more staff that was involved with what the Chippewa Hockey Network was when they
Yep.
were at undergrads at CMU, and they all went all on to have professional careers. I think Tyler was most recently with the Houston Texans. I think he moved somewhere else now.
Yes.
Sean's doing his thing with the Erie Otters, and that's an amazing gig. I could only wish to get to that level. But
Yeah.
we do try to have fun. And, when we kind of rebooted this thing when I was a freshman, I had a good advisor to me by the name of Nick Lacer. And he basically passed down to me the equipment that Sean and Tyler used, and told me take good care of this and go do what you want with it. But the most important thing is have fun.
Yeah.
And from there on, we just started assembling broadcasting students. We have a great broadcast cinematic arts program at CMU, and I started to just pull together students from wherever. Hey, you want to run a camera for this game, or do you want to run color? And I did that freshman year with Calvin Keys, who's now with Adrian College Television, and I called a game that series against Grand Valley with him, and he's doing great stuff. And then Reagan Cleaves, he came on last year, and he was already a natural. I mean, he has ties to the Grand Rapids Griffins, and he's always dreamt of being a play-by-play guy. He used to talk about being at Griffins games and doing play-by-play into his own little teleprompter microphone, right? And so we've got a good thing going around here. It's a student-run program that all CMU undergrad students, and I think the oldest person is me right now in my junior year academically. We've started doing like we mentioned, pregame shows, postgame, live interviews. We've kind of expanded now. We just released our first studio show inside Chippewa Hockey, kind of deep diving into the players and getting firsthand analysis. And we've got a great D3 program, obviously, at CMU, but the women's Division II team has been a big talking point. We just expanded this year to cover them. We've got student broadcasters following them around, and I think they're 11-1 right now, the most wins ever in their program history. So, with me and Reagan, what we do here, it's a lot of fun, but there's so many people behind the scenes, that help us out. And it takes a village, right? And, all the parents and the donors and the team, the players, the relationships I've gotten to build. And, I'm just so fortunate to be surrounded. It's so cliche, but I'm just fortunate to be surrounded by great people that are like-minded like me, that want to cover this team well. And, for a career, obviously, but more or less have fun and, enjoy our time while we have it at CMU, because there is something special here. And you certainly wouldn't want to miss it. So make sure to catch all of it on the CMU Club Hockey Network.
Heck yeah, for sure. And we got to get together and do a game together next semester.
Absolutely, Lou. Absolutely. My dream. You're the GOAT, man. Like, I'll give you that title. You're not gonna like it.
Thank you very much, man. You're too kind, but no, I think that'd be a blast. Well, I'll get on. I'll check out your schedule and see if it doesn't conflict with Aquinas, since I do the play-by-play for them. We got to get together and do a game. Maybe we'll see what you do. Maybe we can talk. I'll talk to the powers that be at CMU to excuse you so you can go to Boston and
hopefully
do some play-by-play there, because I know they could use a good voice like you.
Thank
Devin,
you,
this has been fun. This has been fun. We're up against it. Have a great Christmas season. Good luck in the second semester. We'll be in touch. We'll get you back on. Maybe we'll get you back on before the conference tournament for the Vesna Cup. We'll preview that.
I'm a ACHA junkie. I'm a Division III junkie. I'm always here. So
all right,
love it, Lou. Thank you. This is an awesome show you got going here.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you. All right, we'll talk to you real soon.
Yep.
See you later. All right, Devin Serra joining us here on the show. That's going to do it. Great conversation as always. We're going to be back in 2 weeks on January 9th, I believe, or the 10th. The 10th, that's right, because the 9th is the night that Michigan's going to win the national championship in football. So we'll talk a little bit about that. No, we'll save that for the extravaganza, but we'll be back on January 10th. We're going to have a great show planned for you. Another lineup of great guests. Want to thank Tom Mooradian, the head coach of Niagara University, for stopping on by. And, of course, the play-by-play man for Central Michigan Hockey, Devin Serra, breaking down Division III as only he can. And it's very insightful, as always. So, and we want to thank you, the viewer, for taking time out tonight to join us here on the show. Happy holidays, like I said. Be safe, especially if you're in Michigan this weekend. Plan a little extra drive time because we got a blizzard coming, it sounds like. So wherever you go, be safe, enjoy your family, and can't wait to talk to you in 2023. Captain Lou saying, keep your heads up, keep your feet moving, keep your sticks down. But as always, keep your minds open. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ACHA Power Play on the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube, powered up by Belly Up Sports. So long.